dda, croeso i'r persbectif baganau, arwyn o Yucca dwi, ac dwi'n dod o America, ond yn fam gydod o Gymru yn y Gogledd. So, welcome to the Pagan Perspective, and this week we're talking about Celts. Waiting for that backhoe to go away, but I don't think it is. So, sorry about that. Hope it's not too loud for you guys. So this week, our original question, it's written below. I'm going to move through it sort of quickly. Asks us if we could give the titles of some good books on the Celtic pantheon and Celtic mythology that this person feels very drawn to them. And Cara added on a little bit of a twist because a lot of folks, a lot of the hosts may or may not be super connected to specifically the Celtic culture, pantheon, or anything like that. So it was an opportunity to share from a different path or practice that we've been doing. Now, for me, I actually very strongly identify as a Celt, or more specifically, a Celtic American. I'm a Murphy and an Evans, so I'm Welsh Irish. My husband's Scots Irish. You know, that's a very big part of our identity. We hang out with a lot of other big Irish families. You know, we come from massive families with lots of people, and it's very important for our culture. Although also Irish, I do identify more strongly with my Welsh side. And I want to talk about, you'll notice in there I gave specifics, right? I said Irish, or Welsh, or Scottish, or Breton. I'm not Breton, but that's another one that exists. And it's a little bit of a, and this happens with every different group. Celtic is, like paganism, it's an umbrella, right? But it's a much smaller umbrella. So the Celts were and are, and you'll have some people try and argue with you that Celts don't exist, and I think that's absolutely ridiculous. It's the same way as saying that Hispanics don't exist. Like, no, obviously, like, we all exist, and it's a cultural identifier, not necessarily a racial identifier. And whether, you know, our conceptions about race are really that valid or not, or if those are really reflected in biology, is a totally different topic. I'm extremely skeptical on that. So there's the Celts. We were a group tied together traditionally throughout much of Western Europe by language and some cultural similarities. And today we still have some of the Celtic languages, and it's a branch of the Indo-European tree. So we've got the Romance, the Germanic, and further out in terms of the relationship to the Celtic branch, we've got the Slavic and all of those. So with the Celts, basically, we have two different branches, and there's a lot of languages in them, but right now, in terms of the largest, most spoken, we have Welsh and Irish, and you'll often hear Irish referred to as Gaelic, but really it's one of the Gaelics. There's Irish Gaelic, there's Scots Gaelic that I'm aware of. I don't know if there's other Gaelics. I know that my grandparents, who were on the Murphy side, obviously, who spoke, when they spoke in English, referred to it as Gaelic, but an Irish national today would be more likely to call it just Irish. And then there's Welsh, which obviously comes from, we speak it in Wales, which is where I identify most strongly with. I'm starting to make this video long, so let me pull it back. What I spoke to you earlier was Welsh. Just to give you a flavor, you know, it's the most widely spoken of all of those languages, and we have fought very hard to keep the language alive throughout the centuries, really. So, that being said, the Celtic pantheon is not a pantheon, right? It's not one group, because the names for gods and deities and mythology is going to be different. And I'm going to speak really just about Wales and Ireland, because those are what I know the most about. You know, our names for figures in mythology, which are usually what get pulled out and called the Celtic pantheon. There's similarities. There's certain figures that you can point at and go, oh, well, that's kind of like, you know, what they're doing over here in Wales, is that's sort of what they're talking about in Ireland. So I guess you can get online and you can look up certain deities, and it's kind of a mix. People have just sort of mixed them all together. But if you're really looking at the original cultures, and again, original is kind of a weird word because it depends on what point in history, you're not going to find a single unified pantheon. Same thing with the mythology. So getting to the center of this question, you ask about books that talk about the mythology. And I'm going to be very Welsh-centric here and talk about from one of my copies. I don't know if you can actually see it from there. This is the Mabinogion. This is an English translation, which I like quite a bit, by Gwyn Jones, and also A. Thomas Jones. And it smells wonderful. I bought this when I was living in Cardiff. I have some Welsh version, well, it was originally written in Welsh, and older Welsh that's hard. My Welsh is, I can speak, I can get along, I can understand most things, but some of the heavier literature is hard for me. Anyways, this book, this has our traditional myths that survived, and the history is really fascinating. So if you're interested in Celtic anything, I say pick up the Mabinogion. Some of the figures in here have been pulled out specifically by modern Americans as being gods, and I'm not really sure on how well that reflects how they were perceived or not perceived. You know, Wales was Christianized pretty early on. They're very proud to say that the Bible was actually translated to Welsh before it was English. So, yeah, this is great. Unfortunately, I can't find any good recordings that I like of it, because there's one out there that I found, but the fellow, it's an older recording, and the quality wasn't great, but you know, you can't just get on Audible and get it. But you can look it up on, you know, Amazon or anything like that, and you'll find just a million different copies. Make sure you're getting whatever your language is, though. So, that's my ramble to 2 cents on Celtic mythology, being a Celt, being a Celtic American. So yeah, comments in the comments, questions, anything like that below, and subs week next week, and then see you in June. So well.